Hi, welcome back to my channel, and today I'm going to talk about rejection in publishing, why it hurts so darn much, and what we can possibly do about that. So, an unfortunate truth about being in publishing and being a creative in general is that you are going to face rejection. We face a lot of it as writers. We face it as querying authors trying to get an agent. We face it when we submit to editors trying to get a book deal. We face it trying to get certain type of marketing for our books. We face it after the book is out and some readers don't like our books. And that's a lot of why we tell authors do not read the reviews. Rejection happens at all stages of publishing. For me, the feeling of rejection started to really get to me after a while. I felt like I wasn't doing enough. I felt like maybe I could have done something better in order to not be rejected the way that I felt like I was being rejected. So I wanted to figure out like why it was hurting me so much every time I saw like an offhand negative comment, or someone tagged me in a bad review. I wouldn't even read the review, but I would see, oh, they tagged me in a review and they gave it 2 stars. Obviously they hated it, and then I would feel so dejected for the rest of the day. I wanted to know why I was feeling that. So I went to the experts and I did some research because that's my background, clinical research, and I found some really great articles about why rejection hurts so darn much. First, I learned rejection piggybacks on physical pain pathways in the brain. fMRI studies show that the same areas of the brain become activated when we experience rejection as when we experience physical pain. This is why rejection hurts so much, neurologically speaking. In fact, our brains respond so similarly to rejection and physical pain that Tylenol reduces the emotional pain rejection elicits. And that's from Psychology Today article titled 10 Surprising Facts About Rejection. So this was fascinating for me to learn, and also just explain so much because, like I said before, I would be tagged in like a potential negative review and I just couldn't function for the rest of the day. I'd just be really sad. I'd be kind of depressed. I couldn't continue writing if that's what I was doing at the time. And I just like sank into my feelings. And to learn that it is attached to certain neurological pathways that are also like part of how we process pain made a lot of sense to me, because when you are in physical pain, you can't function. And it really kind of puts a damper onto anything that you are doing that day. I think specifically in publishing, rejection can hurt so much, more so than in an industry that's not creative, because our work is such an integral part of our identity, right? So it's an extension of who we are as a person. So when I used to work in clinical research, if someone was like, oh, you didn't do this report right, you have to do it again or do better next time, I wouldn't feel like I was being personally rejected. I would just think, okay, I gotta do the report better. I'll learn to do it better, because the report wasn't representative of my identity. Whereas now, when I write a book, I'm putting a part of me inside of that book. I can't help it. So I think that as writers, when we feel a rejection for our work, it's much more personal to us. It feels like a rejection of us. So when you read a bad review, it's really hard to separate your own sense of self from the book, and you feel like they're rejecting you as a person instead of just rejecting this one individual work that you did. And therefore, that's why the feelings of rejection in publishing can feel much more intense than in some other industries, because it is very, very personal for us. Okay, so then the next thing that I learned was rejection served a vital function in our evolutionary past. In our hunter-gatherer past, being ostracized from our tribes was akin to a death sentence, as we were unlikely to survive for long alone. Evolutionary psychologists assume the brain developed an early warning system to alert us when we were at risk for ostracism. So this is really interesting to me. So it's pretty much saying that like our intense negative reaction to the perception of rejection, or the idea that we could get rejected soon, was honed over centuries and centuries of evolution, which means that we feel bad even before we get rejected. We feel bad at thinking we might get rejected, which makes a lot of sense when it comes to publishing, because when you get that first blip of like, oh, this could potentially not be taken as like a lead title, or this could potentially not sell, or this could potentially not get marketing, or maybe not every single reader will like this book, we go into panic mode immediately. Oh my God, I'm a horrible writer. Oh my God, what am I doing? Like, you get really depressed before you even get like a concrete rejection, which really freaking stinks, because that is also really debilitating. As I said before, like the first sign of rejection, you can't really function anymore if you haven't gotten good coping mechanisms. Another thing that really bothers me is the fact that as a person of color who wants to talk about my own culture and identity in my books and have it run the gamut of being like not a big freaking deal to like it's the whole entire point of the book, there's so many things in publishing that auto rejects our POC like culture. Things like saying that there's only space for one, we call it the Highlander practice, where there can be only one Asian fantasy book, or only one Latinx magical realism book, or only one Black horror novel. That kind of mindset is telling us that we have a much higher potential for rejection in publishing, and therefore our censors are on high alert. We're like really ready for the rejection to come. So we are entering this industry at our own peril for a rejection, because the industry tells us before we even get into it, be like, you're probably not going to be wanted here. So it really, really has so many layers for us as authors of color. So the thing I do believe, and that I found out in my research, was that some of the worst fallout from rejection is in fact self-inflicted. So the articles say, rejection sends us on a mission to seek and destroy our self-esteem. Blaming ourselves and attacking our self-worth only deepens the emotional pain we feel and makes it harder for us to recover emotionally. So what I took from this is just be careful of your reaction to rejection. And I think that we see this sometimes. We've talked before on Twitter about like authors who reply to negative reviews. And I mean, of course, the reason that they are replying to it is because they are reacting to rejection, but their reaction has caused them to somehow lash out against the person that they think is rejecting them. But the problem is that that is a personal choice. Once you decide to react to the rejection in such a public and negative way, that's an action that you've chosen to do, and then it makes the situation much worse. I also think it's really important for us to understand that even though we are all friendly with each other, we're not all friends with each other. So unfortunately, we have to assume that anything we say in public, especially places like social media, could potentially be a person's first impression of you, especially because now you're more of a public figure as an author. And so just because you're in your feelings and because you feel in the moment you have a justification for lashing out and venting, try to save that for your private group chats and your true friends, not Twitter or at a publishing party. Something that I found out in my research that I actually think is really important to realize is that rejection actually temporarily lowers our IQ. Being asked to recall a recent rejection experience and relive the experience was enough to cause people to score significantly lower on subsequent IQ tests. Tests of short-term memory, and tests of decision-making. Indeed, when we are reeling from painful rejection, thinking clearly is just not that easy. The result of this is the conclusion that rejection does not respond to reason, which really freaking stinks. So what should we do in order to cope with rejection? What can we do to do it? Can you do anything, or should you just like lay on your couch and like eat your favorite pint of Ben & Jerry's and watch TV? I mean, I'm sure that really actually does work in some situations. Like, I would never tell someone to not eat some ice cream and watch bad reality TV sometimes when they need it. I think it can work, but maybe there are other coping mechanisms that can work as well that might be a little bit healthier. So my first advice is to not react yet. Don't have any type of public reaction when you first have that feeling of rejection. I would say just take a beat. And for everyone, a beat is a different length of time. For some people it's an hour, for some people it's half a day, for some people it's overnight or a couple of days, but however long you need in order to get over that initial feeling of rejection, because remember, rejection does not respond to reason and makes us kind of less intelligent and reasonable in our reactions. So wait until you have gotten your reason back before you react to that rejection in any forum that could be public. This includes Facebook groups that are technically secret because things can always be screenshot, and of course social media, like any event that you go to, anything like that. So another thing that you can do when you feel rejection, instead of focusing on the negative parts of it, like thinking that you failed, you could focus on what you learned from it. Things like, if this had never happened, then I would never have found out that I was kind of weak in this area, and I will work on that now, and I will know that it will be stronger next time. That's kind of a good way to look at it if it's possible for you to do that in the moment, just to kind of see a silver lining. Another thing is, don't hold everything in. I know I said before, do not like publicly react to things, but that's more of an advice, like, because you are an author and you have an author platform, don't tweet about it. But you're still allowed to like call your friends and vent about it, or cry, or be sad, or talk to your partner, or talk to your parents, or talk to your siblings. You're allowed to let out the feeling, just don't do it in a public forum, because keeping that feeling in is really unhealthy, and it will build up and build up and build up, and it might explode in a public way when you can't control it. The final thing is to address the fact that rejection destabilizes us because of our need to belong. So I think a big thing when you feel a rejection is to find a space where you are surrounded by people who you know appreciate you, who love you, who value you as a person, as an individual. So if it's because on Twitter you feel like you're getting rejected, log off of Twitter, call your best friend, go into the next room, be with your family if that's possible. Just go to a space that's safer for you and where you know that you feel comfortable and you feel valued. That's really, really important. And if you are isolated right now, then I think that it could just be that you need to remember what you love about yourself and what you love about your writing and about being an author and being a writer, what you love about storytelling, and just value yourself and your worth as a writer and an author. And that's super duper important, because I think that sometimes we get so caught up in these individual instances of rejection or these feelings of rejection that we lose sight of the fact that overall we did a really big thing by writing a book and putting it out there and being brave. So that's kind of my journey of doing some research on why rejection hurts so bad and what we can do about it. If you liked this video, I'd really appreciate a thumbs up or a subscription to this channel. If you have any comments or questions, then I'd love to see them down below, or you can tweet at me at CatShow. I'm on TikTok now, CatShow Writes, Instagram, CatShow Writes. Yeah, I'm everywhere. So thanks for watching, and I will see everybody next time. Bye!